Cyberpunk 2077 is buggy, notoriously buggy, so much so that it was pulled from the PlayStation Store just 1 week after its release and suspended until CD Projekt Red could get the game in a better working condition. And even though I was as jazzed to play Cyberpunk as anyone else, life hit and I ended up missing the game. So 7 months later, and after a barrage of less than stellar reviews, as well as a number of critical patches, I'm finally playing the game for the first time. As a huge fan of Deus Ex Human Revolution and Deus Ex Mankind Divided, which both covered cybernetic enhancements and had similar RPG shooter formulas, I still figured Cyberpunk 2077 couldn't be all that bad. Because to me, Cyberpunk 2077 always just looked like a sequel to Deus Ex. The game was recently patched to the point where it was finally, once again, available for purchase on the PlayStation Store, and with that epic milestone, I was able to convince my bosses at GameSpot to let me play the game for the first time, despite our already extensive coverage, so I could see what it was like to play a game that is now at least workable enough to be released, and was definitely not just an excuse to play a game I've been wanting to play for work. Definitely. My quest to play Cyberpunk 2077 began with buying it on a physical medium. You see, I'm one of those relics of an old age who prefer physical copies of games so I can feel like I own them. As you can see, I've wasted a huge amount of money on games you can buy at a fraction of the price. So I drove over to my local Best Buy, only to find out they didn't carry the game. Less than a year later. That took me 30 minutes out to another Best Buy where they just happened to have a copy of the game stashed away in the back. And it was only 30 bucks. It even came with this map that I'll probably never look at, and these sweet postcards that I can't wait to send to my family. To reconfirm, I'm a giant nerd. So after waiting 40 minutes for the game to download onto my PS5, I excitedly started the game. Oh. A 45.2 gigabyte file. Great. And thus, I stopped my first recording and decided to go to the park to work out while I waited. And I'm back. Lucky me, Cyberpunk 2077 was up and ready to be played. I chose normal difficulty because I just assumed that's how the developers want you to play the game. As a YouTuber, I felt that Nomad life was right for me because I've also moved a few points in my life. And while I thought this hairstyle might be the most accurate to me, no, you may not see the back of my head. This is a fantasy world, so I chose a slightly different haircut. As a side note, this is a future where you can completely chrome out your body in implants, so how have they still not solved male pattern baldness? After that, I was in the extremely immersive world of Cyberpunk 2077, or so it was advertised. But one of the first things I ran into were these people playing cards and having a barbecue, most of whom I couldn't talk to when I tried, and maybe that was a good thing.
I have no reason to live.
With VO like that, I get it.
Honey, you gotta tell me how you got to be you.
Excuse me? Are you talking to me with a soda in your mouth?
Ah, you wanna have a good time?
But as a fan of Shenmue, I guess I can't really complain.
Do you have a minute?
Sorry, kid. We're busy. Man, check with someone else.
Do you know anyone who might know this Charlie guy?
Nah, can't think of anyone.
So I guess that was the first thing I noticed, how lifeless the NPCs felt. And roughly an hour in, it happened. My first glitch! Jackie walking right through an elevator. It wasn't a very big one, but after hearing so much about the game's bugs, I was ready for a symphony of game-breaking glitches.
Don't get me wrong, don't got nothing against the Padre or Wakako, but Dex is on.
I think part of the reason I was excited for these bugs was because initially I was a little underwhelmed. And while I'll mention my overall experience later, let's talk about those glitches. Because let's be honest, that's probably why you're watching. And don't you worry, I still found plenty. Like early on when Evelyn Parker had a purse stuck inside of her hand. So anytime she talked, this random purse would move around. Oh, never mind. It just went flying. Wait, it's attached to her hand again. There were plenty of minor glitches, like times when I'd be talking to someone and then they'd suddenly glitch to a slightly different location, people randomly appearing, chairs randomly flying everywhere, this suitcase, which decided to just float in midair because it had nowhere it needed to be, I guess, sneaking into a corner that I got stuck inside of. Walking behind a crate and suddenly clipping through it and being able to see all of the world and cars flying around. My arm not fully loading. I scared this enemy so badly that they just fell over and died. There was the time I had to carry Taki Kimochi's body to the fixer and the mission didn't seem to end. So I had to improvise and throw Taki Kimochi's body on top of a car. While trying out some new outfits, there were times when they would just load as, me being naked. No shirt despite wearing a shirt. No jacket. No shoes. And of course, no pants. Wait, why don't I have a penis? When did this happen? At one point, I messed up a stealth section where I took out a guard and then got spotted. I reloaded my save, and suddenly there was no guard in the spot he'd been in before. He was magically missing. In taking out another guard, who somehow didn't notice Jackie walk right in front of him, the original guard had magically reappeared. Then there were the more annoying ones. For example, when I dropped a foot down onto a ledge and immediately died. I was so confused that I tried it again and was completely fine the second time around. In another instance, I finished a mission and was ready to leave when I discovered I had to talk to Jackie again. However, Jackie had gotten himself trapped inside of a location I could no longer enter. Hey, stop pushing me! I need to talk to Jackie! The only way I could resolve this one was by reloading an earlier save. In this particular instance, I was trying to sneak take down one of the game's cyber psychos. After accidentally alerting him, I left his range, came back, and realized that despite sneaking behind him, I couldn't kill him. In fact, I stood up and walked in front of him without alerting him. I could even talk to him.
Sup? Yeah.
He didn't even mind when I shot him a couple times. What a swell guy. Ironically, in another mission where I was trying to take down a cyber psycho, a netrunner was trying to hack me, and the overheat hack just got stuck at 85%, no matter where I walked or what I did. And the creme de la creme, I did have multiple instances where the game completely glitched out and booted me out of the game. And bear in mind, I'm playing on a PS5 with the most recent updates. But I'd rather end this with my absolute favorite glitches that happened. Because honestly, most of these just cracked me up rather than really bothering me. For example, at one point I decided to stealth take down an enemy sitting on a couch. After knocking him out, the enemy stood right back up, walked to his couch, and then immediately died when he sat back down. That must have been one hell of a brain dance he was watching. After reading that people were having trouble vaulting into windows, I decided to reload an older save and try this myself in the Ghost Town mission. After realizing the window did not want to shatter, despite shooting it and trying to punch it, I jumped in and ended up getting vaulted 100 meters backwards and needed to sprint back to where I'd been. And speaking of Ghost Town, when I tried to romance Pan Am during the mission.
V? Maybe we rent just one room. Maybe calls for a little celebration?
Sure. We can celebrate. But not today. I'm beat.
It turns out all I had to do to be inside of her was reload one of my earlier autosaves, where I was literally inside of her. The game had loaded me into her driver's seat while she was driving the car. And may I just say, Pan Am, you have very exquisite eyeballs. But I saved my favorite one for last. In a later side mission, I tried to stealth take down an enemy only for this to happen. I was worried at first I'd get spotted for, you know, constantly knocking him out like this, but fortunately none of the enemies seemed to notice or mind. That was also when I realized that every time I killed him, he dropped another gun. So when I finally found a dumpster to drop him off in, I was rewarded with this massive stash of shotguns. So of course I looted every single one of them. But the game didn't like that. I mean, it worked, and I disassembled most of them as they were pretty much worthless to me other than for parts, but for the next around 10 to 20 minutes, the game was still trying to give me pop-up notifications that I picked up a shotgun, as it had back-cataloged the nearly 100 shotguns I'd picked up. So those were just some of the glitches I've encountered so far, and honestly, most of them are just goofy and aren't truly game-breaking, as the game constantly autosaves, and I also do manual saves. Any of the truly annoying glitches, which were honestly extremely infrequent, I could just load up an older save. So far I've played maybe around 30 hours of the game, so bear in mind everything I just showed you wasn't all happening at once. I'd probably have around one of these glitches an hour, with them usually being the more minor ones, so it looks a lot worse than when I was actually playing. Yes, it was annoying, but it didn't kill the game for me. In fact, even though I didn't get to finish playing Cyberpunk for this video, I'm still playing for fun because honestly, I really enjoy it. While I was initially underwhelmed by the story, and at the beginning, I couldn't help but compare Cyberpunk to Deus Ex Human Revolution, which immediately had an intriguing story, I ended up getting super into Cyberpunk and its world. On top of that, the more side quests I played, the more I got hooked. It got to the point where I continued to put off any and all of the main quests, which I actually was super interested in, just because I enjoyed playing the side quests so much. To be honest, I didn't really feel like the massive open world particularly enhanced the game, but I also didn't mind it. To me, it suffered from the same issues many games of this size do, which is that a lot of it feels empty, in spite of the bazillion missions and side quests you can take on. But despite some of these gripes, I honestly came away not really identifying with the massive backlash the game received. I understand it didn't live up to the hype for many, but at the same time, it's still a fun game that completely absorbed me into its world. I wasn't expecting the greatest game of all time, but rather a fun game comparable to Deus Ex, and that's pretty much what I got. But maybe that was also because I was playing a patched version of the game on a PS5, and I would have walked away with a completely different experience 7 months ago, especially since I completely missed the insane hype train for the game, and my expectations have definitely been tampered since then. So, at the end of the day, is the game still buggy 7 months later? Yes, and I'm playing on a PS5, so I have no idea how bad the PS4 version might be. But for $30, I really like it, and I'm happy I had the chance to play it. Crazy bugs and all.